Hello, and welcome to day 3 of our 12-day 5th grade math review. Today we are going to be looking at a lot of multiplying. That is a big standard that 5th graders need to learn. And so we'll be looking first at just the standard algorithm of 3-digit by 2-digit multiplication. Our sample problem that we're going to begin with is number 12. And remember, this is all coming from a 2017 released STAR test. Now, this problem does have a trick, so I'm just going to read it, and I'm just going to solve it, and I'm going to see if you can figure out where the trick is. Aspen added 14 to the product of 224 and 16. What is the sum? Well, if you know your math strategies, and you're supposed to underline the keywords or write out the question, notice that the question is actually asking for the sum, but you're going to have to do a little multiplying to begin with. First, we have to find the product of 224 and 16. So let's just do that real quick. 224 and 16. And in 4th grade, you did a lot of your expanded algorithm, partial products, all of that business. By 5th grade, you just got to learn to multiply just what we call the standard algorithm, or the way that your parents probably learned how to do it. So we're going to start in the ones place on the second row and multiply that by the ones place on the top row. So 6 times 4 is 24, so we're going to put that 4 down there, carry the 2. 6 times 2 is 12, add this 2, so that's going to be 14. We're only going to put 1 right there. And then 6 times 2 is 12, add that 1 is a 13. Remember, go ahead and get rid of those carries when we go to the second row. And remember, the second row, this 1 is actually a 10. It's in the 10th place. So we're going to put a 0 in the ones place so that everything I write down starts in the tens place. So there's 1 times 4. That's going to be a 4, but really it's a 40 because it's 10 times 40, because that 1 is in the tens place. 1 times 2 is 2, and 1 times 2 is 2. So it seems pretty simple. And if you're not paying attention, you are going to get the wrong answer. I actually like this question because 3,584, look at that. It is right there. And if you're not paying attention, you are going to choose that, but that is not the correct answer. Go back and read the question. Good to see that you're in here, Adrian, that you can make it for 3 nights in a row. The question is actually looking at the sum. And so we didn't do anything with this 14. Aspen added 14 to the product of 224 and 16. So we've got to add that 14 back in. And now we see we've got this 3,598. Adrian, you are correct. It is G. So that is good. And let's go ahead and hide that, and let's look at our second problem. This is where it gets a little bit trickier. Mia's dog weighs 32.6 pounds. Letty's dog weighs 3.8 times as much. So they're really actually giving you the key word there. When they say times, that's going to be your keyword for multiplication. 3.8 times as much as Mia's dog. What does Letty's dog weigh in pounds? When you're doing decimal multiplication, hopefully the videos that you saw on my YouTube channel this morning or yesterday helped you figure that out. Whenever we're doing 2-digit multiplication, 3-digit multiplication, and there's any kind of decimals in there, to begin with, you just ignore the decimals. We're going to pretend that this is 326. We're going to pretend that this is 38. We're going to come back and grab those decimals in a moment. But first, we need to go ahead and just do our multiplication without messing with the decimals. So 8 times 6 is 48. And we got 8 times 2, that is 16. Add the 4, that's going to make 20. And so 8 times 3 is 24. Add the 2, 26. Once again, get rid of these. And let's go and put a 0 in that second row because this 3 is really a 30 because it's in the tens place. Now we're going to multiply again. 3 times 6 is 18. And then 3 times 2 is 6. Add the 1 is 7. 3 times 3 is 9. And let's see what we have here. Add these up. 8, 8, 3. That's 13. So that's going to be 12. So it looks like I've got 12.388 maybe. But look, I've got 12.388 or 123.88. So we know that it's going to be probably one of those two. So we can go ahead and get rid of these two right here. And this is where we really need to pay attention to what happens with our decimal places. So let's go back to our decimal places. This is really 32.6, and this is really 3.8. What you need to do is you need to count how many digits are behind the decimal place in any of your factors. So you've got 1, you've got 2. So there are 2 digits behind the decimal place in your factors, which means you need 2 digits behind the decimal place in your product. If there are 2 digits behind the decimal place in your factors, 1 and 1, then you would have to put 2 digits behind your decimal place in your product. So the answer is going to be 123.88. The answer is D. If we didn't know that trick, another thing we can do is we could just kind of estimate. 32.6, that's about 30. 3.8, that's about 4. So if you know the trick for multiplying by a multiple of 10, 4 times 3 is 12, and then you just add the 0. So it's about 120, and you see that 120 is a lot closer to this D than it is to this 12. That's the correct digits, just with the decimal point in the wrong spot. All right, so that hopefully was pretty simple. Let's look at our final question for this evening. It's not a lot of thinking, just a lot of multiplying. Mr. Roosevelt has 48 nails that each weigh 1.35 ounces. What is the weight of these nails in ounces? Well, we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to pretend that there is no digits behind the decimal place. We're just going to treat this as 135 times 48, because we've got 48 nails, and that each, so this each is going to kind of give us our keyword for multiply. We're just going to pretend it's 135 times 48. If you're doing a 3 by 2, go ahead and always put the 3-digit number on the top. We'll deal with that decimal place in the end. And once again, we are just going back to basic multiplication. 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 3 is 24. Add that 4 is 28. Now we got an 8 times 1 is 8. Add that 2 back in, and you got a 10. Get rid of those. Put a 0, because this 4 is in the tens place. 5 times 4 is 20. So we're going to bring that 2 up there. 4 times 3 is 12. Add that 2 back in is 14. And now we got 4 times 1 is 4. Add that 1 back in. 5, 0, 8, 4, and 6. So it looks like my answer is 6480. Well, I see 6, 4, and 8 in C, but I don't necessarily see a 0. I wonder why that is. Well, let's go back to our problem. Remember, we had a 1.35. This 48 doesn't have any digits behind the decimal, so we're not going to worry about this. But this has 2 digits behind the decimal in the factor. So we need 2 digits behind the decimal in our product. So it's 64.80. But you can always drop any decimal places that you have after, any zeros you have after the decimal place. You don't need those. So 64.8 is really the same thing as 64.80. So that's one little trick here, because you might be looking for an answer that has 2 digits behind the decimal place, and none of them have 2 digits behind the decimal place. That's because you had that 0 in the hundredths place, and you could just get rid of that. Once again, if you're not sure about what to do with that, you can always just kind of estimate that. So this 48 that's about 50, and we've got 1.35. I'm going to call that about 1.4. I just wanted to estimate that, so that's going to be 200, and that's going to be 0.5. And so that looks like that is going to be 700, but it's not really 700. Remember, I had 1 decimal behind, 1 digit behind the decimal, so it's about 70. I just kind of estimated that 1.35 to 1.4, made the 48 up to 50. So that's going to be my closest answer. So there we go. Our answer is C. Pretty simple this evening, and hopefully you got these answers. Come back tomorrow. It's going to be a little bit trickier tomorrow. This is probably the easiest night out of all of our 12 days of review. And so hopefully you finished 3 out of our 12 days. That means you are 1/4 or 25% of the way through our review of 5th grade math. Remember, if you're keeping track of your score on this 2017 STAR test, we had number 35 this evening, and we had number 17. That answer we said was D, and then we also started out this evening with number 12, and we said that answer was G. So thank you very much, and we'll see you back again tomorrow evening.